And again the night march. A strong cold wind blows in the face, flatters the overcoats, gets under the thin uniforms. In such a frost one can't touch a gun with bare hand. It burns. However, among the soldiers there is the same joyful excitement as among the liberated civilian population, because we are marching on the land, which Hitler's occupants annexed to Germany. Many houses are empty. Their owners, not feeling that they are the rightful owners here, have chosen to leave with the Germans. Around noon we enter Lengnovo. Bydgoszcz is within easy reach. We can already see the smoke of fires inexorably devouring the town. The scouts rejoice that they have finally caught up with the front. The short winter day is approaching evening, when the regiment's head guard, our commander Korumji Reichert, Senior Sergeant Dobrotliwy, Sergeant Grazisiak, Corporals Polak and Alejinik, several men from the battalion reconnaissance and me, reaches the outskirts of Bydgoszcz. In the city we hear gunfire. Carefully looking around, we walk along the street. Some figures loom vaguely ahead. Wait, who's coming? Loudly calls the Korunji. Poles. Don't shoot. Young voices are heard. Come closer, orders Reichert. It turns out that they are boys between 14 and 16 years old. What are you doing here at this late hour? Asks them. The Polish army. Ours? The young men shout joyfully in reply, and, disregarding the formidable barrels of their automatic rifles, rush to our necks. In a minute or two they come to their senses and, interrupting each other, tell us, the Germans are behind Brade. People say that they saw several tanks in the area of Gdanska Street. A German lieutenant colonel of the gendarmerie lives not far from here. Let's go and show him. After a short thought, the commander agrees, faces of the guys shining. Cautiously moving along the walls of houses, we go deeper into the city. Not a soul on the streets, not a sound. Only occasionally the glass from broken windows crunches under our feet. His house is over there, around the corner, where you can see the fire, explains the most talkative boy. We come to a small square paved with cobblestones. Nearby, on the right, a multi-story building is on fire. Here he is on the third floor. I hear the same kid's voice. We enter the entrance. It's pitch black. Kazimierz Dobrotliwy sets fire to a newspaper he was saving for a smoke, and we go upstairs, lighting the stairs with it. The boys are careful to stay downstairs. Here's the third floor. Which door should I knock on? Turns out, in the middle one, the platoon commander hits it several times with the handle of his pistol. A resounding knock echoes throughout the entrance, but there is silence behind the door. Only from somewhere in the centre of the city comes the furious barking of machine guns. Yes, Polak, bang on it with the butt of your rifle. Maybe it will give in, ordered the Korunji. Tra, rumbles the butt of the rifle. Come on, boys. Let's all pile on together, suggested Sergeant Gryzekak. Under the powerful pressure of men's shoulders, the door flies out together with the jam, and the dark abyss of the corridor opens before us. Someone strikes a match, and we enter the apartment. In the kitchen, we find several candles. In their uneven light, we see the apartment left in complete disorder. The doors of the closet are open, linen and clothes are lying on the floor. A uniform with gold-braided epaulettes hangs on the back of a chair. We're too late. He managed to get away. The bastard, sighed the Korunji sadly. Shall we look for something to eat? Olinik looks at him questioningly. Only hurry up. Reichert reluctantly allowed. There is another door leading from the kitchen. I carefully press the handle and neat shelves filled from bottom to top with glass jars appear before my eyes. Guys here. I shout excitedly. What only there is not here. Compotes from various fruits are next to jars of pork, sausage, poultry, canned plums and cherries, with green peas, beets and carrots. We start with poultry. We each get a can of canned poultry. Then we taste a little bit of everything and sit down in the chairs to rest. Platoon, come out. At last the Korunji commands. The street is lit by the fire of a burning building. We are heading towards the canal, from where the firing can be heard. White sheets are hanging from many windows and balconies, a symbol of surrender. It's snowing thickly. In front of us is the bridge over the Bradier. From the area of the grain elevator shots are heard. The head company of our battalion enters the battle with the enemy. From the side of Bridge Street, we hear the roar of tanks, and soon a huge steel monster comes out from behind the turn and at a good speed rushes to the bridge. The turret rotates rapidly, and the long cannon showered shells on the windows of the house from which they had just fired. "Ours," shouted the men of the head company. Having overcome the bridge, we get straight to our tankers. They treat us with trophy canned food found in a warehouse near the railway station, and locals, with breadcrumbs. The canned food and breadcrumbs seem unusually tasty to us. Having organized ourselves into a column, we move along Gdansk. On the sidewalk and sidewalks lying hastily abandoned by the Germans' military equipment, especially a lot of mortars. Shots sound again. People rush into the alleyways, and we, spreading out, take up firing positions along the walls of the houses. Minutes of nervous waiting seem like an eternity, and the silence is threateningly ominous. Finally, we rise, shaking off the snow stuck to our overcoats. Several soldiers with a long anti-tank gun stop nearby. A sergeant with blonde hair sticking out from under his cap asks Captain Sergei Shurka, "Citizen Captain, let me run home. I live not far from here. I want to see the old people. Let them know I'm alive and well. May I, citizen?" "Go ahead. My deputy Korumsha Romuald Lukovsky will go with you, but don't stay too long." Guys, let's go to my house," invites the sergeant. "I'm going with everyone else." As we walk along Ratzlawicker Street, the sergeant tells me that he was forcibly mobilized into the German army, but as soon as he was sent to the Eastern Front, he defected to the Russians. For over a year, he has had no news from his parents. We are approaching a one-story, fenced house. The gate creaks. The sergeant steps first. At the door, he adjusts his cap and knocks. "No, come in," we hear a woman's voice. The door opens and an elderly woman, wrapped in a woolen shawl, looks out of it. In the depth of the dark hallway, we see a male figure. "The Polish army. Our dear liberators, come into the room." The man invites you hospitably. The first to enter is the Korumzi, followed by the sergeant, me and 3 other soldiers. We have a seat. True, it's cold in our house. There's nothing to heat it with. And suddenly, as if stumbling on the way, he exclaimed, "Fredrik, my son, is that you?" And both of them threw themselves into each other's arms. Immediately the neighbours rush over. Everyone wants to look at Sergeant Malinowski, to touch our Polish uniforms. And only Alfred's mother cannot utter a word and stands in the corner, wiping her eyes incessantly with a handkerchief. Her son soothes her. Then she goes out of the room, and a moment later brings some paper tied with a black ribbon. "Look, Fred, look, darling." She holds it out to her son. "This is a notice that you died at Vitebsk, or the Great Germany." Still crying, she explains. The joy of the parents who have found their son again is boundless. But time is running inexorably, and Korunji Lukovsky is looking impatiently at his watch. "Let's go now," says the sergeant, noticing the officer's meaningful look. "We must go now. Goodbye, dears, see you soon." The residents of the house see us off. In parting, the mother warns her son. "Fred, dear, take care of yourself, my child." "All right, Mom, all right." "And beat the Germans better." Father admonishes. When we arrive at the regiment, they are already in full swing preparations for a further march. One column is going along Snajadecki Street towards the railroad viaduct. The other column is moving along Gdansk Street. On the railroad tracks begins the battle for the barracks, and then for Ludwig Hall. The Germans are trying to counterattack. Rumbling guns, regimental artillery and mortars. Under cover of their fire, we break into the barracks. Realizing at last that resistance is useless, the Germans surrender. In this battle, several dozen soldiers of the 129th Infantry Regiment were taken prisoner. From here began the pursuit of the retreating German units in the direction of Zelendovo. Magdalenka Koronovo, our advanced reconnaissance patrol, is advancing along a forest clearing. Suddenly, we hear the roar of an engine running at high speed. We stop for a minute, listen, and sneak up to the edge of the forest. 2 German trucks are stuck there. They can't climb the hill. The soldiers put broken branches under the wheels, pushing the vehicles as hard as they can, but it doesn't help. The wheels are stubbornly spinning in one place. By short runs, we reach the nearest bushes, and then at the command of Korunjigo Reichert, we open fire with automatic rifles. A few German soldiers fall down, hit by accurate fire, The rest of the panic scattered. One truck immediately burst into flames. In the back of another truck climbed Private Richard Ogli, a Turk born in Vilnius, and began to open one by one cardboard boxes that were lying there. "Chocolate," he shouts excitedly and gently drops a large box labelled Anglers into someone's obligingly outstretched hands. We scatter the chocolate bars in our pockets and walk on. Behind us, against the background of the forest, a car burns out, and ahead of us we can already see the brick houses of the village, scattered on both sides of the road. At first glance, the village seems completely extinct. There is not a light or a smoke anywhere, and suddenly the silence is broken by the furious barking of enemy machine guns. Senior Sergeant Kazimierz Dobrotliwy, Corporal Joseph Baran, Privates Joseph Kosidlo and Joseph Paksik, and several other soldiers fell down, struck by the deadly bursts. Ducking into the snow, we respond with short but accurate. The targets are the windows of houses illuminated by bright flashes of fire. From behind we hear stomping. It's our battalion's men rushing to our rescue. The first to arrive were the artillerymen of the anti-tank platoon under the command of Lieutenant Heinrich Hulse. Quickly, as a demonstration exercise, they unhooked the guns, deployed them, and from a distance of a few dozen meters opened fire on the Hitlerites in the houses. A minute later, machine guns joined them from somewhere on the right. With long bursts, they tried to suppress the German fire points. On the line occupied by our platoon, soldiers of the 5th Infantry Company move forward. Ahead, with a pistol, in his hand runs Company Commander Korunji Mikolai Smenitsky. Our onslaught is increasing. Taking advantage of the darkness, the Germans are trying to hide. Pursuing them, we go out to the railroad tracks, burst into the booth of the track keeper. The frightened railroader, without saying a word, raises his hands up. Having warmed up a little near the red-hot stove, we go further. It is difficult to orientate in the night darkness, loose deep snow is very disturbing, and fatigue begins to affect us. Everybody's mood is depressed. We have lost so many battle friends. Suddenly the road is illuminated by car headlights. With every second the light of headlights comes closer to us, and now we are already bathed in its blindingly bright rays. The driver turns off the lights and opens the door of the Willys. From there comes the irritated voice of the commander of the 8th Infantry Regiment, Lieutenant Colonel Konstanty Karasiewicz. "Commander, to me." In the silence of the frosty night, you can clearly hear him reprimanding the Koronjego for the fact that we have lost our way. Meanwhile, the companies of the 2nd Battalion are catching up with us. The artillerymen who'd recently rescued us are approaching. The snow-covered country road immediately becomes crowded and crowded. The car turns around, and our advanced reconnaissance patrol together with the vanguard of the regiment steps further to the west. A ribbon of fire breaks off from the dark horizon and flies over our heads with a whistling sound. Instinctively we fall to the ground, and only then we hear the whistle of bursting bullets. A large-caliber machine gun, a fighter lying next to me determines by the sound. We return fire. Every few tens of seconds the air is torn up by bullets flying from one side and from the other. Behind our backs, heavy mortars. In the direction where the enemy should be, flares fly up into the sky and illuminate the surroundings with a bright light. The fire intensifies, and more flares burst into the sky. I stare at them for some time, and suddenly an idea comes into my head, which I hurry to share with the officer lying not far from. "Citizen Korinji, their rockets have exactly the same colour as ours." "No, so what of it?" "The Germans can't fire our rockets." "What makes you think it's our rockets?" "Because, citizen, German white rockets have reddish flames like matches, and ours burn like Bengal lights." "I don't understand." Seeing that it's impossible to agree with him, I shout loudly, "Guys, don't shoot. It's ours." As if from under the ground, a tall figure of Skrentkovich, a Koronjego Skrentkovich, grows up in front of me. "Who the hell are they? What makes you think that?" I tell him my guess. The soldiers lying near the pass stop firing. The officers are starting to have doubts. "Cease fire. Hold your fire." Commands are heard. The firing subsides little by little. There is some confusion in the enemy position, and someone clearly commands in Russian. "Cease fire." From behind a rock rises Korunji Smenitsky and, folding his palms. "Hey, who are you?" For some reason no one answers for a long time, and finally from the other side comes, "Wesing Essos here." Our officers hesitate for a moment, and then the nervous silence is interrupted by the loud voice of Koronczego Smenitsky. The Polish army. Now, apparently, the enemy is thinking, because the night darkness is again illuminated by the bright light of rockets, and to our ears reaches our ears. What front? The 1st Belarusian, loudly answers the commander of the 5th Company. And we are the 2nd Belarusian. And to make sure that we are not Germans, they ask us another question. Who commands your front? Marshal Zhukov. We answer. Aha, rumbles through the neighbourhood, and the sky is once again illuminated by a multitude of flares similar to Bengal lights. Come on, Zizek. Let's go meet the Allies. Miss Smelnitsky addresses Skrenkovich in Russian. Shaking off the snow from their overcoats, the officers hurry to the no-man's land. On the opposite side, a group of men are coming towards them. The distance between them is rapidly shrinking. Already clearly audible Russian speech. Why did you start shooting? Asks Koronczego Smenitsky. And why did you return fire? One of the Russians interrupts him, and we embrace each other. Shouts of hurrah roll across the snow-covered fields. Soviet and Polish fighters run up to each other, kiss and rejoice that the mistake did not lead to casualties. The senior officers of both Allied armies appear and decide to celebrate the encounter. Breaking into small groups, we head to a nearby village where a Soviet tank unit has stopped. Together with our new frontline friends, we enter a spacious warm hut. The owners greet us with joyful surprise, and the female foreman, who sets the tone with the Soviet fighters, briefly commands her subordinates. Buy the meat and bring an accordion and alcohol from the tank. Tired and frozen, with pleasure we sit down on the straw, with which the floor is covered, take off our boots, dry our cords. The aroma of straw mingles with the smells of fried onions and meat. The master cuts bread, and his wife arranges plates and glasses on the table. A Soviet tanker brings a canister and an accordion, and a female elder invites everyone to the table. Sergeant Baginski and Private Kubik rub their hands together in anticipation of a good dinner. Corporal Olienik pulls out a spoon carefully wrapped in a white cloth from behind his shin. A dish of steaming meat appears on the table. Poor, orders the woman elder to the driver, raises her glass and proposes a toast. To the victory over Hitler's Germany. To friendship between Soviet and Polish soldiers. Verbe to victory. Benetsky echoes her. To friendship. I try to bring the glass to my lips, but I smell the pungent odour of gasoline. I ponder how not to drink this nasty stuff and at the same time not to offend my Soviet friends. Unexpectedly, a junior sergeant of the Soviet army with the Order of the Red Star on his chest helps me out of my predicament. What? You don't like the smell? There were no other dishes, so we poured it into a gasoline can. No, I don't drink at all because I'm only 16. Then put down the glass, son, and eat. I put the meat on my plate and watched the owner of the house sipping alcohol. Some of them had already had a drink and were now sniffing the bread with pleasure. After a minute, the faces of the feast participants blur into a satisfied smile, and a cheerful gleam appears in their eyes. The harmonist is singing Zemlyanka, and we are singing along. The driver of the tank agitates to finish the contents of the canister. Baginski and Kubik put up their glasses and drained them in a volley. Then Kubik, an irrepressible talker, addresses the owner of the house. How far is it from here to Berlin? I don't know. I've never been there, replies the peasant. Some of our soldiers have already eaten and are going to bed. My eyes are getting sleepy too. I hear the others at the table talking about the Germans, about the upcoming battles. Someone is fighting over a place near the stove, but I can't open my eyes anymore. I wake up because the whole house is shaking like a fever. It's the Soviet tankers warming up the engines of their steel horses. They are the first to leave Kharkivka, the village where we are staying. In the hatch of the turret of one of the tanks, I see a familiar woman senior. We wave goodbye to each other, and the vehicles disappear in a snowy whirlwind. Officers announce the gathering. We hastily tidy up equipment and weapons, replenish ammunition. Workers of the political and educational apparatus of the regiment organize the funeral of soldiers killed in the last battle. We with Koronczego Rykut transferred to the platoon of foot reconnaissance. The next day, long before dawn, the regiment acts. The march to the west continues. In front are the scouts. At first our way is through the forest because the road which, apparently, has not been used for a long time, is covered with a thick layer of... After a while, the forest thins out. Taking all precautions and listening sensitively to the silence, we cross the field and come to some railroad station. We pass a signboard with the name of the station written in Gothic script and come to the only deserted platform. Let's go on, orders the Koranzi. The road deepens into the forest again. It is easier to go because the cars have made a wide track in the snow. The trees end, and ahead at a distance of no more than a kilometre we can see a village with a pointed spire of the church. White smoke rises up from the chimneys of some of the houses. It is clear that someone lives here. But whether there are Hitlerites in the village, we don't know. Attention, guys, someone is coming. The commander breaks the silence by taking the binoculars away from his eyes. We strain our eyesight. Indeed, from the side of the village someone is hurrying in our direction. He is dressed in civilian clothes. Preparing to meet him, we take off the safeties. Nurse, stop, stop. Shout as soon as he enters the forest. Hands up, Corporal Falcon adds for good measure. There's a boy of about 14 or 16 years old in front of us. Are there any German troops in the village? Asks the Koranji. The boy is silent. Are you mute? I intervene in the conversation. Ich verstehe nicht. He squeezes out a trembling voice. Oh, you don't understand. Then let's talk in your own way. The commander addresses him in German. Hearing the native speech, the boy regains confidence. He lowers his hands and thoroughly answers all our questions. According to him, at the other end of the village, a group of about 40 Hitlerites camped for the night. The Koranji lets the boy go and turns to us. The Germans are probably still asleep. Maybe we can catch them by surprise and take them prisoner. Let's go faster. We come out of the forest, turning in a chain. With automatic rifles at the ready, we run to the nearest house and enter the yard. We look around carefully. On the right, near the brick stable, there are 2 sledges, loaded to the top with various things. On one of them, 3 children's heads, wrapped in woolen shawls, peek out from under the tarpaulin. Through the open door of the barn, one can see a pig hanging on a crossbar, which is being butchered by 2 tall men. Suddenly, a huge German shepherd dog jumps out of the kennel and comes at me with a loud bark. Without thinking, I raise my automatic rifle and pull the trigger. A sharp, short cue, the dog falls, and the children amicably hit the roar. The men standing near the pig, as if they had been pulled by a string, raise their hands in the air. 2 women with knots come out of the door of the house. When they see us, they put them on the ground and, as if on cue, begin to beg in pleading voices. No, Soldaten, nicht cheapen, wir haben Kleinkinder. At this time, shots are heard at the opposite end of the village. Well, the Germans have woken up, and all because of this partisan. The commander reproaches me. The scouts stand in indecision. What to do? Let's go out into the street, decides Koranji Reichert. Before we could stick our noses out, the air above us was torn by a machine gun burst. We look around for a better position. Corporal Sokol sets up his machine gun on the concrete cellar where the civilians are hiding. I lie down next to him and see Germans in white camouflage coats running away across the fields towards the hillside. Shoot. What are you waiting for? I shout to the gunner of the only machine gun in our group. The corporal aims and presses the trigger, but there is no shot. He lightning reloads the machine gun, and again a metallic click. I'm freezing, damn it. He grumbles. The German machine gun's burst hits the roof tiles again. An old German in a round dark blue cap looks out of the cellar and shouts something to us. Not paying attention to him, Sokol and I try to adjust the machine gun, but the German does not leave. He persistently holds out to us a small metal canister, gesticulates and again explains something. I seem to begin to understand what he wants. I take the can, quickly unscrew the copper stopper and smell kerosene. Take off the disc. I hurry the gunner and pour kerosene on the bolt. Now load and shoot. Ta-ta-ta-ta. Dig Detyerev. Soldiers of the 5th Company are running into the yard. In front, as always, Smirnitsky. No, 5th Company, follow me. He shouts in Russian. Together with the soldiers of his company run out into the street and I have time only to notice how a peasant in a dark blue cap begins to unload the sledge. A short rest. And back on the road. During the next 2 days, we leave behind Koronovo and Sempion-Krajensky. In the evening of January 31, we enter Lipka, and further away stretches the land, which until 1939 was owned by the Germans. A warm westerly wind is blowing. The sky is covered with heavy, leaden clouds. But the change of weather doesn't bother us much. We are looking forward to an important historical event. Entering the land from where Hitler's troops attacked Poland, we pick up the pace and go deeper into the dark spruce forest. Everyone wants to be the first to cross the pre-war border. Our column is overtaken by a wagon with the deputy battalion commander for political and educational work, Lieutenant Viktor Krasovitsky. It stops at a small clearing on the right side of the road. Lieutenant Krasovitsky gestures to stop our reconnaissance team. He begins in a solemn voice. We have entered the land which several centuries ago was taken from us by force by German invaders. It depends on you, on your active fighting. When these lands will return to the bosom of the motherland, we continue our march. The first settlement we met on our way looks extinct. Only stray cows wander along the street. Household Gladziuk, who Koronji Reichert took to the reconnaissance group, sighs. What cattle are lost? I wish I could settle here, at least in that red brick house over there, start with a couple of cows and live happily ever after. Wait a bit. We'll get rid of Hitler, carry out land reform, and you'll settle here if only you stay alive. Encourages him machine gunner so-called. Or maybe we'll live next to each other. We'll drink moonshine and remember in the evenings how we fought. Someone adds from behind. Look, the first road post on this land. I exclaim, it's 20 kilometers to Zlotov. At night, the pace of the march slows down. It gets even warmer, and the melted snow squelches disgustingly underfoot. Somewhere in the distance, to the left of the column, we hear a deafening artillery cannonade and see a red glow. We enter some dark, without a single light, village. We occupy one of the abandoned houses, heat the stove and go to bed. A meagre breakfast is over, and we are on our way again. By evening we reach Zlotov. The houses we look into are in disorder. Apparently their inhabitants left with the Germans. As we move towards Justro, the regiment's units become more and more spread out. Additional wagons drawn by pack horses appear. The more adventurous get on carts. The pace of the march is low because of the thick fog that lays on the surrounding fields. Charioteers are dozing, and exhausted horses stop every few dozen meters. But here at the end of the column begins some movement, and someone shouts loudly. The commander of the reconnaissance platoon is called to the regimental headquarters. Pass it. Koronji Reichert goes to the headquarters, and the soldiers smoke trophy cigarettes and wait for his return. They smoke standing up, because there is nowhere to sit down. There is loose wheat snow all around. A light morning breeze finally disperses the fog. In the forest, the pine trees rustle alarmingly. Ta-ta-ta-ta-ta is heard near us. Just in case we go down into the roadside ditch, water squelches under our feet. Soon the crackle of machine guns merges with the bursts of grenades. Tension rises. Awakened by the shooting, wagons hastily turn the wagons back. Look, our guys manage to get masks somewhere. One hears someone's exclamation. We go out on the highway. It turns out that not far from here, behind the railroad, the soldiers found a warehouse with camouflage clothing and thoughtfully took the necessary number of sets for the entire platoon. Having put on camouflage jackets, we merge with the surrounding landscape. At this time approach the head 4th Infantry Company, and with it the commander of the 2nd Battalion, Major Koropov, and our Koronji. The officers are holding maps in their hands. No, scouts, to me. Koronji Reichert calls. We step around our commander and wait impatiently for what he has to say. We need 6 volunteers. He begins. Me, Comrade Koronji. We reply in chorus. I said 6. There's no need to bargain, it's not a bazaar. I'm appointing Kravitsky as commander of this group. Senior Sergeant, take 5 men and I'll tell you what you'll do. Vladek, take me. Requests came from all sides. Kravitsky turned out to be a good guy. He didn't forget that we studied together at the junior commander school and took me with him. Lieutenant Richard unfolds the map. We are now in this place. He points with a red pencil to a small dot. That's Petsivko. Ahead, around the nearest corner, the Gividia River flows. There are 2 bridges across it, a highway bridge and a railroad bridge. Your task is to find out if the bridges are intact and if there are Germans on the opposite bank. Be careful. Remember that a scout is obliged to see everything. but should not engage in combat if it is not necessary. Well, carry out the task and return safely. The firing that caused a commotion in the cart has subsided. Kravitsky sends 3 scouts to the right of the road, and he himself, together with me and Sergeant Resiak, goes to the left. Taking precautions, we walk in the direction of the river. Through the sparse bushes we can see the blown-up railroad bridge. We carefully examine the stretch of terrain stretching ahead. Then we crawl to the solitary bushes growing on a hillside about 20 meters away from us. The wooden highway bridge, which is clearly visible from here, looks unharmed from the side. Just beyond the bridge, to the right of the road, is a 2-story brick house with some other buildings in the back. To the right, by the river, there is a long red building. There don't seem to be any Germans here, Vladek whispered. And I don't see anyone in the house across the bridge either, says Risiak. Shall we risk it? I'll run first, decides Kravitsky. Hey, as soon as you're halfway across, I'll follow you. The senior sergeant jumps up and, ducking down, runs to the bridge. Now it's my turn. Ta-ta-ta-ta, breaks the silence with a sharp machine gun burst. Staggering sideways, Kravitsky falls. Ta-ta-ta-ta, continues frantically slashing enemy machine gun, and fountains of snow and earth fly up right in front of me. I fall on my side and hide my head in a small depression. The machine gun behind the bridge chokes with fiery bursts. I shovel the snow with my hands, and at first I didn't notice that I had skinned my fingers to the point of blood. My only dream is to burrow as deep into the snow as possible, so that the bullets buzzing above me would pass by. In this brief moment, my whole life flies before my eyes. Help. I recognize Vladek's voice. Again the machine gun beats and the bullets whistle over my head. They must be searching for Risiak, I decide. But how to get to Vladek? Alive. I hear a voice beside me. I turn my head and see Sergeant Risiak. I'm alive, but Vladek was wounded. I explain to him. Behind me I hear some incomprehensible noise and shouting. The Germans open fire again, this time from several machine guns simultaneously. Bullets with buzzing fly over us, but ours do not remain in debt. Through this rumble I hear a familiar voice, which in Russian commands. 5th Company, forward. What about Vladek? Hey, what's wrong with Vladek? I raise my head and see that Risiak has already crawled up to him and is unfolding his cloak tent. I shift my gaze to the wooden bridge. There, behind the bridge, 2 Hitlerites are lying in the bushes and are firing a machine gun, carefully aiming straight at the domed helmets. For Vladek, I whisper to myself. For Warsaw, for all our suffering. I pull the trigger and see one of the Hitlerites grab his face, while the other quickly disappears into the trench. My automatic rifle, from which during the transitions I more than once hit half a brick from a distance of 100 meters, and now did not let me down. Resiak has already managed to put Kravitsky on a trench coat, and we drag Vladek, white as chalk, to a safe place and bandage his wound. The senior sergeant opens his eyes, smiles, and overcoming the pain, whispers, "You are true friends." Not far from us, the men of the machine gun company under the command of Koronjigo Mikolai Bednarkutsak and Staff Sergeant Edward Prutznell are setting up their Maxims. It seems that recently we graduated from the School of Junior Commanders together with Bednarchuk, and now he has been working for more than 2 months as Deputy Commander for Political and Educational Work with machine gunners. Seeing us, the Koronji asks anxiously, "What? Vladek was wounded. Bring it quickly." There's Kozlovsky with his Katafalitsi. We hand over the wounded to the medics and go out on the highway to the place from where we went on reconnaissance in the morning, but none of our men are there. By the roadside, the telephone cable is being pulled by communicators. We ask them if they have seen the scouts, but they only shrug their shoulders. Machine gun and machine gun fire intensifies. From behind the turn jump out galloping horses with the guns of the regimental battery. At the front of one of the guns sits its commander, Lieutenant Tadeusz Bembinek. They see it aimed faster, faster, he shouts. The battery disappears around the next corner, and Resiak and I come to a small clearing. Here the mortars of Koronjigo Larisa Krupic and Corporal Ludwig Doda are bustling about, taking up firing positions. Having set up the mortars, the crews froze waiting for the command. "Hello, hello," impatiently calls into the telephone receiver Larisa, but the machine is silent. As soon as there is a connection, report. She throws irritably to the telephonist. I obey. The young boy stretches out at attention. We pick up the pace and go deeper into the forest, which is a little to the right of the road. We are going in the direction where the battery raced, where 3 of our scouts left in the morning, where the crackle of machine guns is coming from now. On the way we pass a farmstead, in the yard of which the battery riders are holding by the bridle, the horses nervously shifting their hoofs. At last we come to the edge of the forest overgrown with juniper bushes. Our soldiers are firing at the enemy from here. We run over to our own. The Germans answer with hurricane fire. The bridge is not more than 50 meters away, but it is almost impossible to overcome this distance. 2 brave men, who tried to reach the bridge, lay down near the road forever. In the roadside ditch, several officers are listening attentively to Smirnitsky's story. Here are our Commander Korunzi Reichert, former Company Commander Korunzi Skretkovich, Platoon Commander Korunzi Francisic, Zakovich, who replaced Reichert in this position, Commander of the 2nd Company of Anti-Tank Rifles Sub-Lieutenant Wojciech Shereta, Senior Adjutant of the Battalion Korunzi Koma, with a rocket launcher in his hand, and some other officer of unknown height. I would have made my way to the other side of this cursed river, if the remains of the railroad bridge had not collapsed completely and did not crush more than a dozen of my men. Says in conclusion the commander of the 5th Company, "We must seize the surviving bridge." Suggests Skretkovich. "Without artillery, Krauts from the trenches will not knock out of the trenches," intervenes Korunzi Reichert. "And I'll still try," decides the commander of the 4th Company, climbs out of the ditch, runs up to the line chain of his soldiers and commands. 4th Company, run over, behind. The soldiers jumped up and bent, ran out of the forest. A strong machine gun and mortar barrage falls on the advancing soldiers. They crawl back to the edge of the forest. One of them has his jaw torn off, and he runs holding his hands over his face. Blood whips between his fingers. Boom, boom. Beat on Hitler's defences are regimental guns. The first floor of the building across the river is shrouded in smoke. Korunzi Hesha is pointing out targets to the artillerymen with a rocket launcher. It's time to raise the soldiers to attack. The officers decide and scatter to their units. "No, forward, boys," shouts Korunzi Skretkovich and first rushes to the bridge. I see fountains of snow flying up at his feet. It's the Germans firing from a distant red building, not paying attention to the fire. Skretkovich is followed by Sub-Lieutenant Shereta, Korunzi Reichert, Corporal Soika and me. Behind us we can hear the stomping of soldiers' boots. The first to the bridge runs Skretkovich. On the right, a German machine gun is furiously spewing fire, but fortunately for us, the gunner is not aiming well, and the bullets fly over our heads. The bridge is already behind us. Together with Soika, we jump into a German trench next to the bushes. We come across a machine gun abandoned by Hitlerites, near which there are several boxes with machine gun tapes. At the bottom of the trench lie the corpses of Hitler's machine gun crew. "You know, joyfully I say to Leon, when I was partisan, I had exactly the same. Instead of talking, let's better turn it in the direction of the Germans. It may be needed at any minute," interrupts me Soika. We prepare the machine gun for battle and see how a group of our fighters, led by officers, reached the brick building from which the Germans had just fired. Korunzi Reichert throws several grenades through the window. 2 Germans with machine guns jump out from behind the barn and rush towards the nearby forest. This is just for me, as if something prickled in my brain, and I lean over the captured machine gun. I take aim, pull the trigger. The shell casings are ejected and the Germans are getting farther away. I aim again more accurately, and again I miss. Hitlerites are already a few steps away from the saving forest. "They'll go away," Leon throws angrily. A bit of a long line. The one who was running with a machine gun, as if suddenly bumping into something, falls down and the other one disappears into the forest. The J climbs out of the trench and rushes after the second captured machine gun. And the Germans in the brick building still continue to defend. Our fighters from the cellar located in the middle of the courtyard are trying to bombard them with Faust patrons. In the walls of the house appear large torn holes. The 4th and 5th Infantry companies have already moved to the bridgehead, and the 2nd Company of machine gunners, led by a smiling, thin-skinned Lieutenant Andrzej Super, is running across the bridge. The 4th Company moves to the 2nd Echelon of the battalion and organizes the defense. Sergeant Baginski sets up his Maxims on a hill dominating the road leading to Jastrow. The machine gunners of Koronjego Mikolaj Bednarchuk fly into the garden adjacent to the brick house and take up firing positions. Warsaw touches Mount Kaya. Mikolai's voice sounds loud and is drowned in the rumble of machine guns. German mortars are booming. One of the mines exploded near Bednarchuk. He staggered, fell, and instantly a red trickle of blood flowed from under his Confederate. Sergeant Edward Prutznall and Sergeant Joseph Izdebski ran up to the wounded man. They bandaged his head, and Mikolaj opened his eyes and whispered to Edie. Mers, forward, to Var. On my right, the soldiers from the 2nd Mortar Company, Korinji Ignacy Konopka, are hurrying me. At the same time, Larissa's mortars are running up with rifles. Korinji Konopka turns around and, seeing the platoon commander from his company, who is looking for a place to set up a mortar, show her. Larissa, over there. From a long red building standing by the river comes a jerky machine gun burst. Konopka grasps his chest, bends and falls. Larissa runs up to the wounded man, strokes his cheek and repeats, Ignacy, Ignacy, you must live. And Korinji Konopka, choking on blood, with difficulty squeezes out of himself. So, about shield, about everything. Same not. A moment more, Eki stretches out motionless on the snow. With her head uncovered, the girl cries and the wind flutters her hair and the hem of her overcoat mercilessly. She puts on a Confederate shirt, tucks the halves of her overcoat behind her belt, and in the approaching dusk, she runs to catch up with the platoon. After a while, Soka and I enter a brick building that has been wrested from the Germans. Right outside the door, we come across a corpse in a German flying uniform. Our fighters are everywhere. The windows are covered with cloak tents, the fire in the stove is humming merrily. Korinji Koma cannot be happy with the trophy pistol. We share our impressions about the first victory won on these lands. Soon we get canned food and trophy galettes from the battalion. For the first time today, we can eat well. Some dry their soaked clothes, others go to bed. When Olinik and I decided that it would be good for us to have a rest, there is no place to lie down. All the places on the floor are occupied. Olinik comes up with a brilliant idea, to sleep in the closet. I go out into the yard. Melting snow is dripping from the trees. The soldiers are sitting in their trenches smoking, hiding their cigarettes in their sleeves. I head toward the hill on which Sergeant Baginski is setting up his machine guns. Even from afar I hear his voice. Lie down in these bags and watch the road. How are you? I turn to him. Good. And you, I see, miss the old company, laughs the sergeant. No, scouts are good guys too, but I have no place to sleep. Well, that can be fixed. We'll give you a sleeping bag and you'll sleep properly. My guy's got a couple of these. Take one for yourself, he says in a friendly way. Thanks. Listen, I think there's a car coming. We listen. Now we can clearly hear the rumble of the engine. The darkness and fog are cut by the beams of headlights. Carefully crossing the wooden bridge, the car is approaching us. We have to stop it, or they will run into the Germans. I am worried. Running out on the highway, we stop the Dodge. An officer with Colonel's epaulettes on his shoulders sticks out from under the tarpaulin. What's the matter? He asks. Netian says, Comrade Colonel. I begin hesitantly. There are Germans where you intend to go. Merbens, give me a map. The Colonel briefly throws to someone sitting in the car. In the light of electric flashlights, several heads are leaning over the map. They argue animatedly about something. Finally, the light of flashlights goes out, and the Colonel sharply reprimands. Hey, panickers! Yastrov is already in our hands. Driver, let's... They're gone. We should have held them off. Baginski reproaches me. Why did you let them go? You're a senior sergeant. It was more convenient for you. You heard him call us panickers. Anyway, there's machine gunners up ahead. They'll stop them for sure. Silence reigns, only the distant noise of the engine. Don't worry. My superiors know what they are doing. I try to justify myself and shake in my own eyes. Well, where is your promised sleeping bag? I walk along the trenches in the opposite direction. Peaceful snoring comes from everywhere, and so unnatural in this night it seems threatening. Boom, boom, tay, 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 tay. Damn it. They don't let a man sleep, grumbled someone in the trench near where I had stopped. Probably the car with the Colonel ran into the Germans. Yui, I say rather to myself than to the sleepy soldier, and turn into the yard of a brick house. I find the door and go in. Some soldier sits near the stove, tosses the remains of broken furniture into the fire, and without turning his head, drops it angrily. Nut, can't you see that there are no vacant places? And the table. I will sleep on it, I decisively declare, not wanting to leave the warm room. Close the door, or you'll let the cold into the room, and lie down wherever you want, even on the ceiling. He changed his anger into mercy. Carefully, so as not to step on anyone, I make my way to the table. I unfold the sleeping bag and try to get into it, but I can't. I have to ask for help from the unkind fighter sitting by the stove, who still hasn't even looked at me once. Listen, kid, help me get into the sack. What sack? He asks in surprise. He turns around and, like me, cautiously approaches the table. Where did you get it? My machine gunner friends gave it to me. We found some in a German bunker. Not a bad idea, huh? They got all kinds of stuff and they don't have to worry about a thing. But we'll live just as well. You'll see. I just wish the war would end soon. The two of us managed with the sleeping bag, talked a little about this and that, and the soldier returned to the stove. I toss and turn until I manage to warm up and assume a suitable sleeping position. From the closet comes Oleanik's steady, healthy snoring. Already in a half-doze, I see Kravitsky's pale face on the snow and fall asleep, but I wake up from the furious rattle of the guns. Outside the window, machine guns are fiercely slashing, and there is an unimaginable noise and clamour in the room. They are drowned out by the booming voice of Sergeant Andrzej Grzeczek. 2 companies of German machine gunners with tanks have broken through here. To the trenches, the soldiers are blown away. I try to crawl out of my sleeping bag without success, and, desperate at last, I scream like a scream. Help. Bang! Something falls to the floor with a thud. The impression is that a shell from a tank cannon hit the wall. Help. I hear someone screaming nearby. Help me get out of this damn closet. Look, don't yell like that. I'm lying tied up on the table in a sleeping bag, and I need help too. Damn closet. It should have fallen down with the doors. The Oleanik almost cries. Only the Germans are not enough to take us with their bare hands, like sheep. I think angrily. What a mess. Comes from the closet. The machine gun, fire does not stop for a minute. I get goosebumps at the thought of what might happen to us if the Germans burst in here. I hear voices in the hallway. Someone opens the door with an effort and puffs heavily. I close my eyes and pretend to be dead, just in case. Oh, it hurts. Citizen Corporal Trauset. Sirs. I exclaim joyfully. Friend, untie it, I ask a soldier with a medical bag. Now, I'll just lay the wounded man down. Asen's the nicest of the hearse men I've ever met in the war. I was already untied. I get out of the sleeping bag and vow never to use this stuff again. The two of us help Oleanik out of the closet. I'm free at last. Stefan smiled into his red moustache. Let's go outside, he said hurriedly. Seeing me fiddling with my wet boots, he advised. Put on bare feet. You hear, they're shooting. Hurry up. I stuffed my boots into my pocket, grabbed a machine gun and ran out of the house after Oleanik. The trenches are full of our fighters. From deep in the forest comes fierce shooting. On the road to the river are running machine gunners. On the bridge stands Major Kuropov and tries to hold them off. Tanks. One of the fighters shrieks exhaustedly. We see Bignew Skrentkovich runs up to him, grabs him by the scruff of the neck and asks him with a shivering calmness. Where the hell did you see tanks? Show me. See the first patrons? Take them and wait for them to come up. And don't you dare retreat. Where are they? The soldier looks around confused. Then he bends down, takes one of the first patrons and takes a position in the trench. I run up to the machine gunners of Bagipsky. Stanislav sits on some stump and calmly sips from a trophy flask. Me for courage. I ask. No, so that others don't get it. We are waiting for the Krauts to come here. We will meet them properly. Do you want to camp next to us? The commander of the company machine guns suggests it. I set my machine gun at a fallen pine tree and keep my eyes on the highway shrouded in fog, on which a car passed at night. From there are still the voices of our fighters. The firing gradually subsides. Tanks are not yet seen or heard. Only occasionally the guns rumble, and shells, barely touching the tops of pine trees, burst in the distance beyond the river. Not so fast, I can't go on any longer. Someone's voice comes from the highway. I look in that direction, and only after a while 4 of our soldiers appear out of the fog. They are carrying the dead Koronczego Eugeniusz Petrusiewicz from the company of machine gunners. "Is there anyone else of ours left there?" asks Baginski. "I think not," I answers Joseph Boguslawski. The shooting stops. We make ourselves comfortable and continue to watch the highway carefully. I turn my head to the right and see the calm face of Sergeant Antoni Buksinski leaning over the Maxim, to the left Sergeant Baginski frozen at the machine gun waiting for tanks, and between them the heads of soldiers with automatic rifles stick out of the trench, lurking, waiting for the enemy to appear. Time stretches unimaginably slowly. Clothes from the wet snow become completely wet. Baginski raises his hand. Attention, I glare at the white wall of fog, and at first I don't notice anything suspicious, but a dark figure emerges from the thick fog. A moment later it takes the form of an armed Hitlerite. After the first fascist appears the second, the third. They are walking in a row along the roadside ditch. "Matthew N.," shouts the commander of the machine gun platoon. I press the trigger and hear how my machine gun is choking in fury, how the Maxims of Baginski and Buksinski are banging smoothly, how the machine guns are crackling. One German collapsed on his knees and let go of his rifle, and others fell after him. "Get back! Get back!" yells someone invisible in the fog. We rush forward to the place where the voice comes from, calling the Germans to retreat. After the rumble of battle, the silence seems especially marvelous. Baginski disappears somewhere and returns a minute later with a trophy, a silver Alpine Edelweiss. He took it off the cap of a dead Nazi. For the headquarters of the regiment, probably, was a complete surprise that a small group of our fighters managed to repel the counterattack of the Germans on the opposite bank of the River Gavidi. Apparently, the rumor about the appearance of tanks reached the higher authorities, and some time later, the Soviet anti-tank artillery arrived at our site. However, the alarm turned out to be false. A belated pursuit of the enemy began. Koronczy Reichert gathered the scouts. I handed the trophy machine gun to the men of the 4th Company, and here we are pacing ahead, in the vanguard of the regiment. The conversation is always going on about the recent battle, about the dead and those who distinguished themselves in this fight, and I did not know at that time that the command appreciated my participation in this battle, and at his suggestion I was awarded the rank of Koronczy. 19 days later, the commander of the army signed the order. But I learned about it only 4 months later. The head of us carefully survey the terrain sentries, so we feel relatively safe, and with curiosity looking at places where recently there was a battle. Here next to the highway lie 5 dead Germans, and not far away, in the roadside ditch, found their grave 9 more Nazis. They must have been covered by our dagger fire. And here were 3 more fascists, and suddenly we come across a familiar Dodge, turned upside down. There are several dead officers in Polish uniforms, and among them is that colonel who did not believe in the correctness of our information. Koronczy Reichert salutes the dead. Near him we stand in deep silence. We're coming out of the forest. It's a short walk from here to Jastrov. We pick up the pace because the regiment's vanguard is following us almost on our heels. In the town we meet soldiers of the 4th Division, who entered it from the other side. We stop for a rest. In the neighbourhood settled the 5th Company. Some soldiers, without waiting for lunch, look into the abandoned houses and take out of their jars with various viands. It's not hard to open them. We've already learned how. "Hey, out of the way. Get out of the way," someone shouts. I prudently get off the road and see Yatsky from the 5th Infantry Company, sitting on the high seat of a hearse, chasing a couple of red horses. This jolly fellow has thought of something again. Whoa. He stops the carriage, glittering with black lacquer and silver, hangs the reins on the gold-coloured lantern of the hearse, walks springily up to Koronczy Smenitsky, clicks his heels dashingly, salutes and roots and reports. "Citizen Koronczy, allow me to put you at your disposal. This is the carriage of the richest German in the city." While Yatsky was reporting, the Koronczy stood at attention, keeping a pretend serious look. But as soon as the lieutenant closed his mouth, the Koronczy, along with everyone else, burst into unrestrained laughter. Then he winked meaningfully at the petty officer. "It turns out that now I have to ride this hearse. You've made it up, Yatsky, but you're right. In war you have to laugh sometimes, and again the soldiers gathered in a heap are laughing. After waiting for field kitchens with lunch, we set off again, and the hearse remains in the middle of the sidewalk. Neither Reichert nor Yatsky rode on the hearse anymore, but the driver has since been nicknamed the hearse man by evil tongues. We're moving in the direction of Sipniv. Other divisions of the First Army of the Polish Army have gone forward, and ours is in the second echelon. On the road now and then we meet houses abandoned by their owners, stray cattle wandering. From afar we hear the rumble of guns muffled by the distance. Toward evening we reach Sipnev. The artillery cannonade gradually subsides and we settle down for the night. The next day in the morning the 7th and 9th Infantry Regiments enter the battle. Everywhere the firing positions are full of guns, the lack of which we had felt in previous battles. The new day begins with an unusual revival in the battalions of the regiment. I run to my old company for news, but no one knows anything. True, there are rumours that they are sent to the rear of the enemy with a special mission. When I returned to my platoon, I told everything I'd heard to Coronel Reichert. What to the rear? I'll find out everything now, he decisively declares. But the rumours are confirmed, as evidenced by the unhappy expression on the Koronjigo's face. It turns out that the 1st Battalion is going to Gorzo Wielkopolski, the 2nd to Rezepin, and the 3rd to Inner Roklaw. And us. The scouts are worried. We'll beat the Germans here, says the Koronji briefly. Alone, without infantry, shakes his head doubtfully, Sub-Commander Duda. There's nothing to worry about. The regimental headquarters and all the independent units remain besides us. Reichert encourages us. From the street come sharp commands and the stomping of many feet. Infantry battalions of our regiment leave Sipnev. We go out into the courtyard. The weather today is fine. For the first time in several days the sun looked out. The temperature is just below 0. But the men of the reconnaissance platoon are not happy. When will we see each other now? They asked disappointedly. After noon in the streets of the village again began some kind of revival. This is a special units. Artillery, mortars, anti-tank guns and even both companies of machine gunners transferred as a means of reinforcement to the 7th and 9th Infantry Regiments. The next day, after we'd had taken over guarding the regimental headquarters, the unit commander, Lieutenant Colonel Grzegorz Sama, drops by the location of our platoon. Koronel Reichert reports that the men are cleaning their weapons. "Well, how are you doing, scouts?" asks the lieutenant colonel. There is a sepulchral silence. "Why did you hang your heads? Maybe you'll cry some more." "We're not going to cry, Citizen Lieutenant Colonel," I hesitantly say, but it still seems to us that they forgot about us. "The guys need more concrete work," explains the Koronzi. "And isn't it a specific job? To guard the headquarters near the front line? After all, guard duty is also a combat mission. By the way, it is mentioned in all the regulations. You have probably already heard that quite a large group of Germans managed to break out of the encircled pile. They will surely try to break through to their own, and it is not excluded that just in our section. That's when you'll have a concrete job. But regardless of that, I'll ask the Chief of Staff to find you, as you say, something more substantial. Come with me." He addresses Reichert. The Koronji soon returns. "I've just been to the regimental headquarters, and do you know what I saw?" "Yes," he declares from the threshold, and, without giving us time to think, continues. "Our supply officer, Lieutenant Mieczysław Obedzinski, together with 2 soldiers, captured 19 Krauts. Where did he get so many of them from?" Surprised Sergeant Duksinski. He was returning from the division headquarters, and the Nazis fired on his car. The guys were not confused. They jumped out of the car and opened fire with automatic rifles on the hut from where the Germans were shooting. And then they threw a couple of grenades, and the Krauts, having raised their legs up, left the house. And we sit here idly, he finishes bitterly. 2 or 3 days after this incident, a platoon of sappers took over the security of the headquarters from us, and we moved to a beautiful brick building. It is much more comfortable, and all our duties are now reduced to guarding the house and looking after our own household. Tonight we sleep soundly, although the artillery cannonade rumbles monotonously from the front not far from us. Only the outer posts are awake. Ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. Suddenly there is the crackle of machine guns at the house itself. With a ringing sound the glass from the windows flew out, bullets buzzed in all the rooms like wasps. Alarm! Alarm! The sentries shouted belatedly. We quickly grab our weapons, with which none of us ever parted for a moment, and take up firing positions at the windows. Someone is already firing a long line. Others join him. The pungent odour of burnt gunpowder spreads through the rooms. Damn it, they should have run into us. I hear the commander's voice in this crackle. Part of the soldiers will stay to defend the building, and the rest will go around the Germans from the rear. We can't lose a minute while it's still dark, he decides. The first to climb out through the window is Reichert himself, followed by Taschuk, Jan Zayumets, me, Gladzuik, and a few other scouts. Korunzi leads us through the gardens, and after a while we are already in the rear of the Germans. Scouts, follow me. Hurrah! Shouts the Korunzi and is the first to rush into the attack. Hurrah! We pick up and fire long bursts at the Germans caught by surprise. We run next to Corporal Gladzuik and, when a tall Hitler suddenly jumps out of the bushes, as if on command, we raise our automatic rifles and shoot, almost simultaneously. Leaning over the dead man, we see the SS insignia on the black lapels of his overcoat. Suddenly 2 more SS men jump out from behind the barn and are shot by Reichert and Zayuntz. One of the Nazis manages to Help! Help! Schelites cannot withstand our rapid attack and run away in the direction of the nearby forest. In pursuit of them fly lines from our automatic rifles. Its defenders run out of the building. Altogether, we finally coped with those Germans who tried to resist. The results of the final battle are very impressive. 9 SS men stand with their hands up and look obediently at the victors. Immediately their arrogance and self-confidence disappeared. 2 fighters take the prisoners to the regiment headquarters. The rest are combing the neighbourhood. Only in the garden they managed to count 7 corpses in SS uniform. Such results of the battle not only testify to the courage and ingenuity of the scouts, but also were the concrete work that we dreamed of. Passes half of February. The units of our regiment for 3 or 4 days replaced the 7th Infantry Regiment, located near Nadazhitsi. The very next night our scout platoon and company of machine gunners were attacked from the rear by the Germans, as it turned out later, with the strength of up to a company. The fascists managed to come close to our trenches and throw hand grenades at them. The main blow falls on the company of machine gunners. Some Hitlerites even managed to break into our trenches. The Germans are coming through. Theirs is very close. Some of them broke through our trenches and disappeared in the night darkness. But our fire was very effective. Accurate lines killed more than a dozen fascists, about the same number of wounded. In the company of machine gunners, only 3 were wounded. We are again transferred to the 2nd Echelon, and we are stationed in the small village of Brody near Nadazhitz, while the other units of the 1st Army of the Polish Army are overcoming the Pomeranian Wall. The 3rd Infantry Division, named after Romuald Troguta, consisting of 2 regiments, is engaged in defensive battles. We, scouts, are on guard duty near the regimental headquarters or scouring the surrounding area, and we consider this work as important as participation in the frontline battles. The first month of heavy fighting for the ancient Polish lands is coming to an end. Tomorrow is the 1st of March. In the units of the regiment are talking about a new offensive. Although we are still far from the Baltic, we sing every chance we get. The sea, our sea, will guard you faithfully. We sing about the sea, but frankly speaking, the vast majority of us have never seen it. And so the 1st of March came. Early in the morning, Polish artillery rumbled to our left. Airplanes with white and red checkers on their fuselage appeared in the sky. True, there were moments when it seemed the front was almost silent, but it was a deceptive silence. After a short pause, everything started again. The infernal rumble made my ears ache. This is the main strike group of the 1st Army of the Polish Army, concentrated on the left flank, went on the offensive. Under the powerful blow cracked the front edge of the German defence. And we, understaffed 8th Infantry Regiment, are still in the 2nd Echelon of the division. True, we were given a divisional training battalion, but this compared to other infantry regiments, each consisting of 3 battalions, unequal compensation. The next day in the afternoon began to revive us too. The obozny watched the loading of things. Everyone wants to take with him as much as possible, both what he is used to and what he may need someday. However, the inexorable controllers are meticulous and expertly determine what should be taken with them and what should be thrown away. Unnecessary from their point of view, junk they inexorably dump in the roadside ditch, and about date to load its sequence. In the evening we move out. Regiments in fire contact with the retreating enemy pursue him, not giving the opportunity to organize defense on a new line. The next day we are already in Chaplinek, spread on the shore of the lake, which at this time is still covered with ice. From time to time a strong firefight breaks out. It is our units suppressing the remaining Nazi firing points. Unfortunately, we have not yet taken part in the fighting. We leave Chaplinek and move towards Polsy and Zatroj. Ahead of us, there is a forest adjacent to the road from where we hear machine gun and machine gun fire. Suddenly a line of gunfire came from the forest, and the bullets whizzing over our heads forced us to leave the highway. Staff Sergeant Jan Polek and Sergeant Alfred Malinovsky quickly set up an anti-tank gun. Janik takes aim for a minute and pulls the trigger. A shot rang out. Alfred inserts a new cartridge. The soldiers of the infantry units deploy in a chain. Machine gun bursts crackle incessantly as we reach the edge of the forest. 2 Germans stand up from under a spruce tree and obediently raise their hands in the air. Ours run up to them, quickly disarm them, and the Nazis only doomedly say, "Hitler kaputt." Our movement continues. On the way we meet several submarines with civilians. Seeing us, they stop. All women without exception are dressed in pants or black skirts. They hold white flags in their hands and look down at the ground. The men thoughtfully raise their hands in the air. Only children with cheeks, pinkened from frost, look curiously at their unknown uniforms. You see how old their women look. Corporal Schleichter, a well-known heartthrob, breaks the silence. Would you like them to put on makeup to meet you? Zayons interrupts him. Soon another village appears on the horizon. A little more effort and we step onto the cobblestone sidewalk. Not a soul around. The open doors of the houses creak in the wind and slam against the jambs. We stop for the night. I make a fire in the stove, and Sergeant Vladislav Pentkovsky thoughtfully plays the harmonica. We eat canned meat, drink coffee. It's getting warmer. Suddenly from the street comes a loud laughter and exclamations of women. A sentry in the yard is talking to the girls, on whose left sleeve white and red armbands are visible. At last we are free. They rejoice and, interrupting each other, tell about their hard life in forced labor with German Boers. And one of the girls, a blonde, kisses the scouts in turn. Welcome, come and visit us. Corporal Schleichter invites gallantly. Come on, girls. I hear they have a harmonica, so let's dance in honor of such a holiday. Willingly agrees the blonde. The harmonist slides the swords of the trophy accordion, and the scouts ahead of each other invite the girls to dance. Circling in the rhythm of the waltz couples and those who do not dance. Shuck. Not enough, not enough. Harmonist does not have time to rest, as he is again asked to play something, and yet fatigue takes its. In the morning we go in the northern direction. The shooting is still somewhere far away. We go, as always, ahead of the main forces of our lumpy regiment. We are greeted by our newly liberated compatriots. How much joy shines in their eyes when they see us. More and more often there are wagons with German refugees. The men are unshaven, dirty, and panic-stricken. The women are not very tidy either. At last they too have experienced the hardships and deprivations of wandering. The Baltic is getting closer by the hour. We are again advancing in the vanguard of our column. If nothing suspicious is seen ahead, we get on our bicycles and pedal briskly. In front of us, next to the road, a bushy hillside. With weapons at the ready, we head to this hillside and comb through the bushes. Be careful, guys, warns Franciszek Lukasiewicz, a former sergeant from Lodz, and points to a ravine not far away. We cross it and see a group of people walking along the road in our direction 1.5 kilometers ahead of us. It is impossible to distinguish who they are. Horses, with their heads down, are dragging wagons loaded to the top. We take our weapons off the fuses and wait for the units of our regiment to come up. I see, probably Germans. They all have helmets on their heads. I share my observation. You're right, says Duda. We must warn our men. AA turns around Lukasiewicz, looking for a contact. Apparently they broke out of the encirclement. The forces are unequal, but we'll try to take them by surprise. The sub-governor briefly assesses our capabilities. I've already counted them, exactly 23 men. The arithmetic is simple. 3 for each scout. The Germans are already a few steps away from the hillside. Ande Hoch, shouts the sub-commander. Nendi Hoch, we echo him. Dumbfounded, the Germans obediently raise their hands up, not showing even the slightest desire to resist. All soldiers drop their weapons. With a terrible accent orders in German Lukasiewicz. Tez hastily fulfilled his order. We jump out of the bushes, putting forward the machine gun. I approach the fat German and, poking him in the stomach, I explain by signs that he unbuckle the belt buckle with the inscription, "Got him right hands." There is a holster with a pistol hanging from his belt. I obey. The German clicks his heels and quickly removes his belt. I hastily unbuckle the holster, and in my hands I have a magnificent Walther. The main forces of our platoon are approaching. With them come a few communicators. We hand over the prisoners to them, and we get on our bicycles and ride on. On March 8, we enter the village of Roshancino, not far from Kolobrazig, from where we hear a continuous artillery roar. There must be heavy fighting going on there now. However, we are still quite far from the city. The field kitchens have completely forgotten about us, and we, relying only on our ingenuity, 6 of us go in search of food without even reporting to the Korange. We enter the yard of some rich owner. The house is brick. From the trenches we can see the nearby fields with islands of melting snow and puddles of water. Intuition did not fail. The pantry is indeed full of food. We nimbly empty the cans, and in the yard a mongrel yaps squeakily. Will someone look at who it's barking at? Corporal Schleiachter addresses us. The group of Germans is moving here from the side of the field, reports Sokol. Without waiting for an order, we quickly take positions at the windows overlooking the field. There are 3 times more Germans than us. Besides, they are better armed. The 2 in front carry even handheld machine guns, while we have none at all. We'll have to rely on the thick walls of the house and the help of our comrades. Already we hear the speech of others, and then from the corner of the barn the Germans appear. They stop at the logs piled near the fence. Some of them sit down on them, take off their helmets and wipe sweat from their faces with their sleeves. It's time. I whisper to my comrades. We raise our automatic rifles, but a moment earlier Schleiachter pulls the trigger. 2 Germans fall to the ground, killed by his aptly timed shot. Through the broken window panes come screams and groans. Help! Don't shoot! The Germans, scurrying around the yard, obediently drop their weapons and turn their heads in our direction. Putting forward automatic rifles, we go out into the courtyard. We look at the unshaven faces of the Germans, at their eyes running from fear, at their legs trembling at the knees. On the battlefield lie 8 dead and wounded Krauts. We take away all personal weapons and take the prisoners to the headquarters. There we are immediately surrounded by comrades and pelted with questions. We rejoice at the first victory gained on the outskirts of Kolobrazig. We will show ourselves again when we enter the battle for Kolobrazig. We promise, inspired by today's success. From the first military reports we learned that the German garrison is stubbornly defending the city, declared a fortress. Not for a minute is not silent artillery cannonade. During the day a thick black smoke rises over the city. At night, a bloody glow of fires. The first of our regiment to enter the battle for Kolobrazig was a battery of 120 M mortars. Together with the 7th Infantry Regiment, it crosses the Pasenta River and strikes the Lemborsky suburb. Other units enter the battle only on March 10 at the junction between the 7th and 9th Infantry Regiments. Among them is our reconnaissance platoon. Before the performance, the commander reminds us, "No, take plenty of grenades." Hey, how many grenades should I have, Citizen Koranji? Already all the pockets are full of them, and still not enough. Lukasiewicz asks. In street battles, the artillery will not always be able to turn around and help. And then all hope for grenades. Take them, and don't hesitate. Orders Reichert. We hang the grenades from our belts, and those who have trophy duffel bags stuff a few grenades into them as well. We are approaching the city. From all sides, rumbling machine guns. Fire greedily devours buildings. Along the road on which we are walking lies a lot of dead. Russians, Poles, Germans. We stop near the burned, still smoking buildings. Here lie 3 wounded soldiers from the 7th Regiment. A corpsman is tending to them. Where were they wounded? We ask one of them. In the leg. I see. And where? Not far from here, near the church. Watch out for snipers on the rooftops. No. How are the Krauts holding up? They fight like hell. We have to take every house, what can I say, even every barn, adds another quietly. An officer unknown to us comes up and shows Korun and Reichert where we should go. When you reach the road, do not delay, but run over to the other side, to a 2-story White House with 2 balconies. There are still ours there, and further on the Germans. We are going in the direction indicated. The crackle of machine guns and grenade bursts can be heard quite close, bullets whistling frighteningly above our heads. They must have discovered us, so they organize a concert. Me as someone grumbles from behind. But no one keeps the conversation going. The darkest thoughts are swarming in my head. Here is the road, and behind it, a white 2-story house with balconies. Run over 2 or 3 people. On the other side, orders the platoon commander. We overcame the sidewalk safely. Once only a machine gun line crackled, but the bullets whistled past, knocking off in several places the plaster of the house to which we are running. It's night, but you can see as clear as day. The artillery fire from both sides doesn't stop for a minute. Smoke billows, sparks fly out of the burning buildings. We go down into the cellar, pull to one of the windows found crates, and Sokol sets them handheld machine gun. Here we feel almost safe. Soldiers from the unit that seized the house come, buy us trophy cigarettes and ask us about our unit. We willingly answer their questions. At the end of the visit, the owners of the house complain about difficulties with drinking water. Each apartment has a water pipe, but for some reason the water doesn't flow. True, there are puddles in the yard, but I wouldn't advise drinking from them, explains a corporal with a long Cossack moustache. It's not like ours. Every peasant has a well with a crane in his yard. And what water? Sokol smacks his lips. It's especially nice to drink it when you come back from the field. He praises his native land. Then, bang, hits our cellar with a German shell. From the powerful explosion, the building shakes to the very foundation. Apparently, the safety in the basement is really relative, and as if having read our thoughts, the worried Koranzi Reichert looks at our house. You've settled down well, even the ship's guns can't reach you here. I think I'll stay with you. Tomorrow we will to the attack, and now set up a duty at the machine gun, the rest to sleep. We sit down on the floor and try to sleep, but the artillery cannonade does not stop all night. In the morning everyone's eyes are red from lack of sleep, and new guests are already walking around the yard, soldiers of the company of 82M mortars and a gun crew of 45mm anti-tank gun. Before breakfast we have to capture a neighbouring house on the opposite side of the street. The mortars will open fire, and when we go up to the attack, the cannon calculation will suppress direct fire points of the enemy. Plum plume. Mortar barrels bounce. Well done, guys. I praise them. Not enough mines, or we would have shown. The tall sergeant reveals his steel teeth in a smile. Suddenly everything around comes to life. Machine guns crackle from all sides. The artillerymen roll their cannon around the corner of the building and open fire. Prepare to attack. Get the hand grenades, comes Reichert's excited voice. The first to jump out is the Korunji himself. We run after him, firing at the windows of the house we are to capture. The artillerymen are also firing from their small guns. The Korunji raises up a grenade, a wide swing, like a good mower, and the grenade flies through the window. The house shudders from the explosion. The window frame falls to the sidewalk with a crack. Somewhere on the top floor, a machine gun chokes for the last time. Throw grenades through the windows. Tries to shout over the noise of the battle Korunji Reichert. In sedictions that they throw grenades and run up to the wall of the house. We wait a few seconds. Boom boom comes from the depths of the house explosions. Let's get in through that window. Give me a boost, yells the officer. 15 minutes later, the whole first floor is in our hands. In the corner room, near the hole in the wall, there is a German machine gun and its calculation broken by our grenades. 2 comrades keep their eyes on the door leading to the courtyard, and Reichert, like a cat, sneaks to the second floor. Gladziuk barely manages to follow him. We freeze in anticipation. The commander rises higher and higher and disappears around the corner of the stairs. There is silence in the neighbouring rooms. Only broken glass crunches nastily underfoot, and on the top floor a machine gun barks angrily with angry bursts. In the third floor landing, a hole in the wall, through which you can go into the neighbouring building. The commander orders me and 3 other scouts to eliminate the German machine gun and himself with the remaining soldiers through the hole in the neighbouring house. Guys, let's split into pairs. Me and Lukasiewicz will climb up, and you, Shyokta, together with Jasinski, will cover us from behind. If necessary, you'll come to our aid, I ordered. Carefully, try not to make any noise. We stop near the only door leading to the attic. From there we hear the rattle of a machine gun. I press the door handle. It's closed. What are we going to do? Lukasiewicz is nervous. For a minute I look helplessly at my comrade, then at the massive door. Egg, give me a German grenade with a wooden handle. It will open any door better than any key. Suddenly comes to me a saving thought. I take the grenade and go to the door. Even though it's an easy job, I can feel the sweat beading on my forehead. And the machine gun in the attic is still pouring fiery bursts of fire at our fighters. Give me some string. I don't have any shoelace. Then a bandage. Lukasiewicz rips open the rubberized wrapping of a German individual bag and gives me its contents. I quickly tie the grenade to the door handle so that it doesn't accidentally fall, unscrew the metal cap from the handle. The small porcelain ball hangs on a silk. Go lower and prepare another grenade. I advise the sergeant. And holding the body of the grenade, I pull the ball and running, jumping over 2 steps, go down. I count to myself 121, 122, 127, and at that time there is a deafening explosion. The staircase fills with smoke and dust, and there's a terrifying ringing in my ears. Follow me. I shout to my comrade and rush down the steps leading to the... It's hard to run. We are choking on acrid smoke and lime dust, and the splinters of the broken door are crunching under our feet. On the way I take the grenade off the fuse. In the doorway I can see the attic, filled with clouds of smoke. Again grenades fly into the attic, and the house shakes with explosions. Well, are we going in? Asks Lukasiewicz. It's too early. You can't see anything there now. Let's wait until the dust settles. I explain to my comrade, but I myself can't wait to see the results of our work. Hardly anyone is left alive. They are not shooting. Let's wait. Hey, is there anyone here? Asks Lukasiewicz and just in case repeats the question in German. The attic remains silent. They don't give any sign of life. Probably ready. I try to reassure myself and my... Someone's coughing. Do you hear it? Franek whispers. I hear. Pointing the barrel of the machine gun in the direction where the cough comes from. I pull the trigger several times. We listen again. Silence. The dust has almost settled. Cautiously through the doorway to the attic, and just in case we give a few short bursts in the dark corners. A few shingles have been knocked out of the roof opposite the door. A German is lying beside the hole. I lean over him. He's dead. He can't have been here alone. Someone was coughing. Surely not him. We look around warily. Do you hear a phone ringing somewhere? It must be the telephone. Franek whispers again for some reason. I turn back sharply. Near the chimney, next to the phone, lies a German in a naval uniform. Lukasiewicz picks up the phone, and I hear clearly, Hans, hello Hans, Kursi Tubi Nasi 2. Let them call Hans. Mouse Franek puts the pipe on the lever and calls me. Look, here is another hole, I go to the chimney and find another big hole in the roof. What a view from here. I even whistled with admiration. If it weren't for the smoke, you could see the Baltic Sea from here. Yes, indeed. Look, there are Germans on the roof. The sergeant brings me to my senses with his exclamation. Get Sokol here with a machine gun. Right away, I order, and I think to myself. The Germans have closed the attic door tightly. So from house to house they run across the roofs. We'll have to report it to the platoon commander. Nesting Riponsol, take a position near this hole. I say when he appears in the attic, and keep a close eye on the roofs of neighbouring houses. A German phone just rang here. The guests may come. And you, I turn to Lukasiewicz, bring Schleier and Jasinski here. We must prepare for the defence. We'll go. It's a good idea, the Krauts. We're looking for them downstairs, and they're climbing on the roofs. Listen, where's the phone you were talking about? Sokol asks. There, behind the chimney. Did you cut the wires? No, why? What do you mean, why? What if we have to leave the attic? The Krauts will come back and use it again. I'll go cut it off. He won't stop gibbering. You gave them a bad time. The first time it hit the attic, I thought. Surely some of ours are dead. Stop talking. Yui cut the machine gunner off at half a word and ordered, better prepare at a firing position. There are sandbags near the broken German machine gun, bring them here. And you guys, I turn to the others, take out one tile each and watch the roofs. You got it. What about ours? Where's the commander? Jasinski is asking. You go to the commander and report that we're in the attic. Tell him we can use the rooftops to get to the neighboring houses. Me. Jasinski interrupts. You. I repeat with determination. I see the boy pale and hesitating. He's only 2 years older than me. Alone. Gentry. Go with him to look for Koronchego Reichert. Let's go. He waves his hand to Jasinski. Sokol sets up a firing position, while Lukasiewicz searches the attic. A minute later he exclaims, joyful, Guys, I found canned food. Bring it here. Sokol, as always, is the first when it comes to food. We open both cans and start eating cold canned pork with spoons. It would be nice to get some bread somewhere. New, says Lukasiewicz with a full mouth. Yes, we haven't had it for a long time, sighs Sokol. Look, a German is walking along the roof. I show my comrades. It's a sniper. He's moving in our direction. I'll meet him when he comes closer. Sokol decides and lies down behind the machine gun. Apparently they were alarmed by Hans's silence and decided to send a contact to check what's wrong with him. Lukasiewicz thinks aloud. The German, apparently not for the first time, uses this way, because he keeps on the roof quite confidently, not paying attention to the strong headwind, which furiously flutters the hem of his overcoat. For a time he is covered by a wall. I should have fired sooner. Something has not shown up for a long time. He's here. Over there, to the right of that high pipe. Lukasiewicz reassures the corporal. Nerf, in just one line, no more. I turn to the machine gunner. It will be done, Citizen Senior Sergeant. He firmly presses the buttstock to his shoulder, holds his breath for a moment and slowly presses the trigger. Ta-ta. Beats a short line. The German stops for a second, takes another half step by inertia, and rolls down the roof with a rumble. Couldn't you have told me before that you could get into the neighbouring house from you? From the broken door comes the voice of the platoon commander. The Krauts are on the second floor, and we can't smoke them out. Now we'll surprise them. Where is the passage? He asks impatiently. I show him a hole in the roof, and in the rays of light penetrating through it, I see how our commander has changed in a short time. His face and hands are dirty. His overcoat is stained with lime. A piece of collar is torn off. The other scouts who came to the attic together with the Koronzim look no better. Reichert hastily gives orders and is about to leave. Why don't you eat a couple of spoons, Jurek? I dare to call my commander by his name for the first time and push the started can of canned food to him. It's too much for me and not enough for everyone. Let's go, he says shortly. And as always is the first to climb out on the roof. We try to keep up, though it's not easy to keep up with him. We overcome the brick ledge, firewall, protecting the building from fires, and we approach the hollow roof, from which Sokol took off a Hitlerite with a short cue. Careful, guys, warns, without turning around, Koronji. I am going third, providentially helping myself with my hands. Overcoming of this difficult and dangerous section of the way by the whole platoon takes a lot of time. In this house the Hitlerites are defending, and on the first floor are ours, informs us Reichert. Do you see the open window near the chimney? Asks Schyachter. Through it is possible to penetrate into the house. We see it? Several voices answer at once. Mati, quiet. Follow me, whispers the Korunchi. We squeeze through a narrow hearing window in the roof. A small metal ladder leads down from it. Trying not to make noise, we gather in the attic. We hear the crackle of machine guns from below. Let's go down to the floor below. The officer orders and rushes down first. In one hand he holds a trophy parabellum, and in the other an unsecured grenade. We're already on the third floor. There's no one here. Apparently the Germans concentrated on the second. In one of the rooms there are several boxes with grenades. Remembering the commander's advice and today's experience, we replenish our stocks. Bullets are buzzing on the landing. We must let our men know that we are here, Mui, says the commander, and suddenly shouts at the top of his voice. Guys, we are on the 3rd floor. Ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. Machine guns bang in response and plaster bounces off the ceiling. Maybe we should try to smoke them out of there with grenades, Citizen Korunji. Sergeant Tashuk suggested. Are you crazy? After all, they can fly to the 1st floor and there are ours. Rejects his proposal. I've got an idea. My burst out? What is it? What if we tie the grenades to a shoelace or a bandage and lower them to the krauts? Then they'll explode at any height we want. That's a brilliant idea. Give me a German grenade, demands the Korunji, still holding a Leimenke in his hand. I quickly tie a German grenade to the end of the bandage, and the comrades standing nearby are preparing similar gifts. And here we lowered the first of them into a flight of stairs. Boom. There is an explosion, and you can hear something heavy falling to the floor below. We lower the next one. Boom, boom. It rumbles, exploding. Then another one, and there's another explosion. We're choking on dust and smoke. But as soon as one of the soldiers tries to go down the stairs, he is met by a line from a German machine gun. He hid behind some ledge and shoots with a Schmeisser. Move your brains, boys, urges the scouts, Korunji Reichert. But we haven't managed to think of anything yet, and we continue to launch grenades on bandages. Listen, why don't we try to lower a bunch of grenades through the window? Tashuk develops my idea. Good idea, approves the Korunji. Someone hurries to measure the distance to the windows of the floor occupied by the Germans, and the rest, without waiting for orders, start making bundles. We open the miraculously survived windows and lower the gifts. The house shakes from a powerful explosion, on the sidewalk ringing broken glass. Korunji Reichert quickly runs down the stairs and throws his Leimenke into the corridor of the 2nd floor, and we rush after him. At the door we bump into a German effluter with a mangled face, who is fiercely wiping his plaster-covered eyes. From the next room Dude brings out 2 wounded Germans. Several dead Nazis lie in the hallway. Now the whole house in our hands, and we hastily prepare for defense. Now it would be good to have a snack, the Korunji admits. We search German duffel bags, find breadcrumbs and small cans of canned food. I look with pleasure at Jurek, who eats them with appetite. Then he throws the empty can into the corner and says, smiling, We worked hard, and the most important thing is that everyone is alive and well. We should present you guys for awards. Where's the commander? Where's the commander? Comes from the corridor someone's loud voice and the stomping of soldiers' boots. Reichert and I go out to meet him. It turns out that it arrived to replace us company from the 9th Regiment. We handed our comrades in arms the captured house, showed them the passage in the wall, warned them to watch the roofs, and for a pack of captured cigarettes we sold them for a bunch of grenades. Scouts, follow me. Reichert calls out and heads first to the breach in the wall. We go out into the courtyard, from where we started the attack in the morning. The smoke of the field kitchen is wafting from a small brick shed. The smell of boiled soup tickles our nostrils. Hey, buddy, can you feed me? The scouts ask the obese cook. But you are not ours. Not stopping stirring in a large cauldron, unkindly answers the one. Not yours, you say. That's right, not from your company. But while you were cooking here, we were risking our lives, Reichert says, his eyes glittering ominously. All right. You can't even joke. The cook lowers his tone at once. Put the wokes on. There's enough for everyone, and he pours us full wokes of soup. The meat is probably not boiled yet. It justifies himself. The dinner will be ready only in an hour. It's all right, brother. We'll eat it too, Lukasiewicz answered for all of us. The headquarters of the 8th Infantry Regiment moves to the outskirts of Kołobrzeg, and we are again on guard duty. It's the 5th day of the battle. Entire neighbourhoods of Kołobrzeg have turned into ruins or burned to the ground. It was the turn of the 4th Infantry Division to go into battle, and we, the Scouts, were replaced by the 1st Company of Machine Gunners. Again, we have to fight at the junction of 2 Infantry Regiments' Trogutov Division. This time we have to interact with the training battalion. Having finished handing over the security of the headquarters, we gather at the agreed place. Korunji checks the available personnel and weapons. As always during street battles, he pays special attention to the stock of grenades. And here we go. in the purple rays of the setting sun gaping huge holes in the gas storages. From here, it's a short walk to the railroad tracks. Behind them is the mansion district, which is still in enemy hands. At dusk, we reach the building. It is defended by only 7 Polish fighters. Having exchanged handshakes with them, we take up firing positions near the windows. The defenders of the house, accustomed to fierce fighting, explain the situation in a businesslike manner. During the night, several times Reichert and I check our defences and noted with satisfaction that the scouts are on the alert. At dawn, our units begin a friendly artillery preparation. Behind the railroad tracks, fountains of earth are flying upward. Above some of the houses, red tongues of flame are rising upward. We leave the building and advance towards the railroad tracks. Bullets fly over our heads ceaselessly. Just to get past the railroad tracks, I wish, and I see a private jump up next to me. Roman shot desperately climbs the railroad embankment, takes a few steps and suddenly falls like a hamstring. This is in Chorunzi. There is a passage under the tracks. Duda exclaims excitedly. "Now couldn't you have told me before?" Mr. Reichert cuts him off angrily. "Then Short wouldn't have died. Follow me," he orders and crawls towards Duda. The passage is very narrow, but it's safe. One by one we squeeze through to the other side. We have to crawl for quite a long time because there are several railroad tracks above the passage. "Well, finally," puffs the Koronzai. "Now there are no more than 50 meters to the buildings we have to capture." But what meters? On the ditch stretching along the railroad bed, we spread out in both directions. The Germans apparently have not yet noticed us and continue to fire over the railroad tracks. Our artillery handles the nearest buildings, and we wait for the artillerymen to move their fire inland. The artillery preparation is over, and there is a brief pause. The first to jump up is Chorunzi Reichert, and with a cry of hurrah, rushes forward. The whole platoon rises after him, firing their automatic rifles as they go. The first building we run up to is surrounded by a strong red brick fence. We throw a batch of grenades through it and press ourselves tighter against the fence. Without waiting for the explosion, we throw the next batch. The ground shakes from the incessant explosions. Shrapnel whistles menacingly in the air. Behind the railroad tracks, mortars oohing and ahing, Corporal Gladziuk climbs the fence, then sits on top of it and gives a line along the fence. Jumping to the other side, he continues firing, and his example is followed by other scouts. Falcon helps me, and here I am also in the yard. I take the machine gun from him and wait for the heavy gunner to climb over the fence. From everywhere comes the crackle of machine guns. The battle is going on simultaneously in several mansions. In the corner of the courtyard are piles of phosphate. The most enterprising decide to use this formidable weapon of the enemy, effective not only against tanks, but also in street battles, against him. Here their blunt noses stick out over the fence. Flames burst out of the nozzles, and the hulls, clumsily wiggling their stabilizers, crash into the wall of a neighboring house. A terrible rumble shakes the air. The wind disperses the smoke, and a gap almost half a wall in size is visible. Running into the courtyard, we pelt the building with grenades, and the last Hitlerites hurriedly leave it. In the courtyard and in the garden of the nearest mansion are heard the voices of the Germans. Reichert hides behind the ledge of the fence. "Guys, the Krauts are preparing a counterattack. We must get ahead of them. Prepare grenades, replenish discs with ammunition, and hit them." Scattered around the yard, we're looking for the best place to attack the enemy. Corporal Pyotr Brzezowski hesitated for a moment and fell, hit by a deadly bullet. Grenades are flying through the fence with a chilling whistle. Explosions are continuously rumbling in our and the German yard. I threw a Lamunka and fired at the windows of the German-occupied mansion. Suddenly a geyser of smoke explodes not far from me, and I hear a deafening rumble. I feel a searing pain, and the machine gun falls out of my hands. I hide behind a concrete staircase, and only here do I find 3 bleeding holes in my right arm. With my teeth I tear open the individual bag and bandage the wounds. The shooting does not stop for a minute. Our attack is swift, even dashing, and here is another house in our hands. Soldiers from another unit run into the courtyard and rush to our aid. At the gate of the mansion, Chorunzi Reichert lined up in a column of 2 German prisoners. I count the pairs 9. Reichert, smiling broadly, comes to me, throws himself on my neck, kisses me, presses me with a prickly cheek. Noticing that I'm unarmed, with a bandaged hand, he asks me sympathetically, "Wounded? It's good that only in the arm. You'll heal and we'll beat the Germans many times. Let me fix the bandage. Before the catapults take me away, I can still be useful. The commander is expertly adjusting the bandage. All fingers, except for the thumb, are moving, so it's not so bad. How many of our men died? I asked the Karunchigo. Behind the house. It fell out when I was wounded. No, get it. The machine gun is still in the same place. Let's see if it's in working order. I pull the trigger and a line goes off. The cadets fall to the ground as if on cue, though I hold it with the barrel up. The machine gun works, but my right arm hurts intolerably, especially when recoil. Besides me, 2 more cadets from the training company are wounded, but they can move without help. The 3 of us take to the headquarters of 18. In the sanitary company, I look only for bandaging and immediately return to their own. I'm afraid that I won't be sent to the rear. Then goodbye, dear intelligence, and I'm so friendly with the guys from Rikatov's group, and although my arm hurts unbearably, I cheerfully say to Katafalitsikame, it'll heal. There came a special day in the battle for Kolobrezig. The soldiers of our 3rd Infantry Division captured Hitlerites with a serviceable radio station, and with its help the commander of the 1st Army of the Polish Army called the German garrison to surrender. A temporary truce was established. The silence that reigned everywhere gives a strange impression, because we have been so long accustomed to it. The time given to the Kolberg Fortress Command to think is running out. The artillery barrels rise up, and the mouths of the guns again spew fierce flames. Again burning houses, again falling dead and wounded. Step by step our troops are forcing the Germans out of the last defensive lines. The fascists hold only a small part of the city and the port. And here on the night of March 18, the last artillery preparation is made. The sky is streaked with the fiery tails of shells of the Guards' mortars. The infantry goes to the last, decisive assault on the enemy fortifications, now defended only parts of the port and the lighthouse. Guns are hitting at direct fire, everywhere machine gun and machine gun bursts crackle. One more rapid dash of our infantry, and on the lighthouse flies a white flag. The news of the surrender of the remnants of Hitler's garrison in Kolobrezig flies over all our units lightning fast. But instead of the expected silence, we hear the infernal firing again. It is the victors saluting the Kolobrezig victory. A bunch of us are heading towards the Baltic Sea. With a minute of silence, we honour the memory of our fallen comrades in arms. And in the evening there was a solemn ceremony of betrothal to the sea, carrying the banner, speeches, festive salute. And a little later, the unofficial part of the ceremony, ending with throwing wedding rings and commemorative rings into the sea.